The Losers, 1970. Not all Vietnam War films were sober reflections or grim dramas. Some emerged from the exploitation circuit, wild, low-budget productions that mixed popular genres with topical themes. Among the strangest of these was The Losers, also known under its re-release title Nam's Angels. Released in 1970, this film blended two of the era's most popular cinematic obsessions, biker gangs and the Vietnam War. The result was something both bizarre and fascinating, a cult movie that remains a curiosity in the history of Vietnam on film. The premise is as unconventional as it sounds. A group of outlaw bikers, imprisoned for their crimes, is recruited by the U.S. government for a dangerous mission in Cambodia. Their task: to rescue an American diplomat being held captive by enemy forces. In exchange for their freedom, the bikers agree, but on their own terms. Instead of standard-issue military gear, they modify their motorcycles into war machines, outfitted with armor, machine guns, and rocket launchers. What follows is a chaotic, violent ride through the war zone, with the bikers clashing not only with the enemy, but with the expectations of military order. Directed by Jack Starrett, a filmmaker known for tough, action-driven B-movies, The Losers was produced on a shoestring budget. It lacked the polish or subtlety of mainstream Hollywood fare, but that was never the point. This was exploitation cinema at its rawest, fast, violent, and designed to shock. The film was marketed heavily to drive-in theaters, where double features and grindhouse programming thrived. For young audiences in 1970, still immersed in countercultural rebellion, the mix of anti-establishment bikers and the controversial Vietnam War carried a certain rebellious allure. The cast was led by William Smith, a veteran of countless B-movies, who brought rugged charisma to the role of the biker leader, Link Thomas. Smith's intense screen presence made him a natural fit for such material. His gang of fellow riders, each with their own quirks and rough edges, provided the rowdy camaraderie that exploitation audiences craved. Despite its outrageous premise, The Losers carried undertones that reflected real cultural anxieties. The idea of the government turning to outsiders, criminals, misfits, rebels to fight an unwinnable war spoke to a growing cynicism about authority. The heavily armed motorcycles, absurd as they may seem, symbolize the era's fascination with technology and firepower as a means of solving impossible problems. And the chaotic violence of the film echoed the nightly images of destruction that filled television screens across America. Reviews at the time were predictably harsh. Mainstream critics dismissed the film as tasteless, cartoonish, and exploitative. But in the exploitation circuit, those very qualities made it a success. Audiences who flocked to drive-ins wanted something outrageous, something that traditional Hollywood would never dare to show. For them, The Losers was a rebellious alternative to the patriotic war pictures of the previous decade. Over the years, the film has developed a modest cult following. B-movie enthusiasts celebrate its audacity, while Vietnam War film scholars note it as a strange cultural artifact, an example of how even low-budget genre cinema absorbed and reflected the conflict of its time. Quentin Tarantino has even cited The Losers as a favorite grindhouse-era war film, praising its unpolished energy and sheer inventiveness. Of course, The Losers should not be mistaken for an authentic portrayal of Vietnam. Johnny Got His Gun, 1971. In the long history of war films, few are as haunting or as devastating as Johnny Got His Gun. Written and directed by Dalton Trumbo in 1971, it was based on his own novel, first published in 1939. While the story is set during the First World War, its release during the Vietnam era gave it a chilling new resonance. For many viewers in the 1970s, the film became less about the trenches of 1917 and more about the moral devastation of Southeast Asia. The plot is stark, even nightmarish. Joe Bonham, a young soldier, is wounded in battle and loses his arms, legs, face, and ability to speak. Though his body is shattered, his mind remains alive. Trapped within himself, Joe drifts between memories of his past life and the horrifying realization of his present condition. The film unfolds partly through his interior monologue, where dreams, memories, and fantasies collide with the unbearable truth of his existence. Dalton Trumbo, a celebrated screenwriter and one of the Hollywood 10 blacklisted during the McCarthy era, had long wanted to adapt his book. By 1971, the cultural climate made it possible. Anti-war protests filled American streets. The draft was tearing families apart, and nightly news broadcasts brought home the human cost of Vietnam. Though Johnny Got His Gun never once mentions Vietnam, audiences immediately connected it to the conflict. Joe Bonham's suffering symbolized the hidden casualties of war. Young men turned into living ghosts, stripped not only of life, but of dignity. The casting was crucial. Timothy Bottoms, only in his early 20s, played Joe with heartbreaking vulnerability. His wide-eyed innocence in the flashbacks contrasted sharply with the silent agony of his mutilated body in the hospital bed. Jason Robards appeared as Joe's father, Donald Sutherland as a Christ-like figure in Joe's hallucinations, and Kathy Fields as his sweetheart. Together, they created a dreamlike world that made Joe's plight even more unbearable. Critics at the time were deeply affected by the film. The New York Times called it an unrelenting cry against the brutality of war. Roger Ebert described it as a powerful, unflinching statement that leaves the viewer shaken. Yet commercially, the film struggled. Its bleak subject matter and uncompromising style made it difficult to market. Many theaters hesitated to screen it, fearing audiences would be too disturbed. Still, Johnny Got His Gun won the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival in 1971, cementing its place as a critical triumph. Over the years, it has gained a cult following, especially after clips from the movie were used in Metallica's 1989 music video, One, which brought a new generation of viewers to Trumbo's haunting vision. Beyond its awards and cult status, the film's legacy lies in its symbolism during the Vietnam years. For young Americans questioning the draft, Joe Bonham was a terrifying possibility, a reminder that war did not just kill, it could condemn survivors to a fate worse than death. For families watching the war on television, the film mirrored their fears. What if their sons returned not in coffins, but as shattered shells of themselves? Perhaps the most chilling moment comes when Joe, through tapping his head in Morse code, begs his doctors to let him die. His request is denied. The Odd Angry Shot, 1979. While American cinema largely dominated the narrative of Vietnam on film, the war's reach extended far beyond the United States. Australia, though smaller in scale, sent troops to Vietnam, and their experiences were captured in The Odd Angry Shot, released in 1979. Unlike the high-octane action of many American war films, this movie offers a subtler, character-driven portrayal of soldiers' daily lives, blending humor, camaraderie, and tragedy in equal measure. Directed by Tom Jeffrey, The Odd Angry Shot is notable for its grounded approach. Rather than dramatizing heroic charges or explosive firefights, it follows a small group of Australian soldiers stationed in Vietnam. The narrative focuses on the routines, frustrations, and occasional absurdities of military life, from boredom in base camps to the tense anticipation of patrols and the occasional confrontation with the enemy. There is humor, often dark and dry, that provides relief from the constant stress and underlines the human need to survive mentally as well as physically. The film's ensemble cast, including Graham Kennedy, John Hargreaves, and Brian Brown, brought authenticity to their roles. They were not larger-than-life action stars, but actors capable of conveying subtle shifts in mood, the camaraderie forged in shared hardships, the quiet despair of men caught in circumstances beyond their control, and the moments of levity that punctuated life on the front lines. In interviews, cast members emphasized the research they undertook to accurately represent Australian soldiers' experiences, from lingo to combat tactics, which lent the film a sense of lived reality that resonates even today. The Odd Angry Shot excels in showing the psychological toll of war. Unlike films that dramatize heroism or moral triumph, this story emphasizes endurance and resilience. Soldiers are depicted as ordinary men, often bewildered by the purpose of their mission, struggling with the boredom of base life and the intermittent terror of ambushes. The emotional weight comes not from large-scale battles, but from the cumulative strain of daily uncertainty, loss of friends, and the constant threat of violence. In this, The film echoes the lived experiences of Australian veterans who returned home to a society often indifferent to their service, much like their American counterparts. What makes this film especially compelling is its willingness to balance humor and gravity. Scenes of soldiers engaging in playful pranks, joking about their officers, or trying to invent distractions from boredom create moments of levity. Yet, these moments are never frivolous. Instead, they highlight the human need to maintain dignity and connection amidst chaos, to assert a sense of normalcy in an environment designed to strip it away. Released at the end of the decade, in 1979, the film arrived after the Vietnam War had ended for most nations. But while the memories were still raw, it did not achieve the international fame of films like Apocalypse Now or The Deer Hunter. But it remains one of the most authentic depictions of soldiers' everyday lives in Vietnam, a perspective often overlooked in popular culture. Critics have praised the film for its understated storytelling and emotional honesty. Unlike films designed to shock or dramatize, The Odd Angry Shot treats its subjects with respect and empathy. It avoids glorifying war, instead capturing the small, human moments that define a soldier's experience. Letters home, shared meals, laughter in the face of fear, and the quiet grief of lost comrades. Which scene hit you hardest? Tell us in the comments below.